Hello all, welcome to the channel DevOps-TECHSTACK. I hope you all are doing safe and sound. Before starting with our agenda, I will share you the points which you need to keep in mind while preparing for the DevOps interview. As we all know that there are lots of tools involved in DevOps and it is very important to know the correct approach for preparing any interview. Also in this playlist, I will keep sharing the projects which you can update in your resume and a resume template too. Now, preparing for the DevOps interview can be a lengthy task, but with the right approach, I will try to make it easy for you. So first, let me share you some tip. Keeping this in mind, we will start with our journey. So here I would like to mention 10 tips and tricks which you can follow if you are preparing for the DevOps interview. So what are they? The very first thing in my list is the learning skills. Let me write over here learning skills. So, what it is? The very first thing in your interview you need to show is that you are eager to learn new tools and technology, as DevOps is something where you always need to be updated with the latest technology in the market. Okay, now comes the second point, confident on your resume content. Let me explain you what is this. Confident on your resume content means the second thing is that whatever you have written in your resume, make sure you are confident about those topics because most of the questions asked by the interviewer is from the resume itself, because at last everyone knows that everyone can't know each and everything. There are lots of tools and technology available in the market, and there is 100% chance that no one has worked on everything involved in the market. Okay, now comes the third point in my list, that is job description review. Job description. Let me write it first. So, so what is basically this job description review? So whenever you get any job openings, you carefully review the job description to understand what skills and experience the company is looking from you as a DevOps candidate. This will help you to focus on the company specific requirement. Let's say you know multiple CI/CD platforms like Jenkins, GitHub Actions, but what the CI/CD platform your company is using for which you are going to be interviewed, focus on that particular CI/CD platform instead of going to each of the CI/CD platform. That way, you can minimize the number of tools which are involved in that particular project. Okay. Now, now let me discuss about the fourth point, that is what it is. It is why DevOps. Whenever you are going to give the interview for the DevOps, there is a high chance that they will ask you the fundamentals of why DevOps came into the market, what it is basically. So, DevOps is the combination of development and operations, you might already know. So, you need to have a solid understanding of both these disciplines. Make sure you have a good grasp on the core DevOps concepts such as the continuous integration and delivery, automation, infrastructure as a code, containerization. So, all those things we are going to discuss in our playlist too. So, you don't worry about that part, but this is just to give you idea, like you can focus on these tips before starting for the DevOps interview. Now comes the next part in this list, that is, let me write over here, DevOps tools knowledge. As you all know, this is a very important point. This is where we get confused because we have multiple tools available in the market as a DevOps. Now, DevOps require you to knowledge of a wide range of tools and technology, such as you need to know Git, you need to know Jenkins, you need to know Docker, Kubernetes, and many more. Make sure you have a good understanding of these most commonly used tools in the industry and can discuss how you have used them in your previous roles or in your previous projects. So you need to show them the project, you need to explain them how you have used in your previous project, the how you have developed the CI/CD pipelines, how you are managing your infrastructures, how you have managed the automation of creation of the infrastructures, how your application is deployed over the Kubernetes. So all those things, basic understanding you need to have before you are appearing for any DevOps interview. In this particular playlist, my main focus would be to go through all the important tools that are related with the DevOps, and I will try to cover all of them in my playlist. Not only that, I will discuss about the projects also, and I am going to discuss about the basic interview questions and the advanced level interview questions that are quite frequently being asked in every interview. Okay, now let me tell you the next point, that is, now in this point I have mentioned about the technical and scenario based questions. Again, if you are a fresher and you are applying for the DevOps interview, this is not something they will go in deep. But if you have somehow more than 4 years of experience or 3 years of experience, they are going to ask you some scenario based questions also. So, DevOps interview often include technical questions designed to test your knowledge and problem solving skills. Practice answering the technical questions related to DevOps, such as how would you troubleshoot a failed deployment, or how would you design a continuous integration and delivery pipeline, how you are going to manage the or resolve the networking issues on the Linux platform. So all those type of technical questions they might ask, and which I will try to focus in this playlist also, so don't worry about that. Now the next point in my list is the, let me write it over here, communication skill. This is very important. Let me write it first. So, DevOps is all about collaboration. So, it is important to demonstrate strong communication skills during your interview. Practice explaining complex technical concepts in a clear and concise manner, and be prepared to discuss how you have worked with others to solve the problems in the past. Okay, so it is very important to convey your message clearly, so that interviewer who is interviewing you, he is having clear idea like what you have worked in your project, and he try to be more clear and concise. That what I can say over here. Okay, now comes the next point. So this is basically past experience. What let me explain you past experience. Okay, make sure you are prepared to discuss your past experience and how it relates to the role you are being interviewed for. Be prepared to discuss specific examples of how you have implemented DevOps practice in your previous organization or in your previous projects, as well as any challenges you faced and how you overcame them. So the most common question is like, tell me some recent failure which you have faced and you were not able to solve it. It took a lot of time for you to resolve that. So that kind of questions usually come. So make sure you have a good grasp on your previous organization task and you are able to explain the interviewer about that. Okay, now comes the next point. What it is, stay up to date with the latest tool in the market. Okay, so finally, make sure you stay up to date with the latest trends and best practices in the DevOps. Read industry blogs, attend conferences, and network with other DevOps professionals to stay informed about emerging technologies and new approaches to DevOps. Before starting directly with the interview questions, I want to share with you all a quick overview on the idea behind all the DevOps tool. First, let's understand the term itself, that is the DevOps. Here, let me write it. DevOps. DevOps is basically the combination of two words. The first word is the development. The other one is the operations. Let me write operations. So development team is responsible for development and testing the application. Development and testing. Now operation team is responsible for deployment and maintenance of the application. All these terms I am talking with respect to the application level. So you have two terms, the development of the application, testing of the application, finally deployment of the application and maintaining the application once it is deployed in the market. So DevOps is the link between these two basically. Now let's understand which tools are required to carry out which particular task. For example, if you have developing an application using Python, let's say some web application you are developing using Python. So the very first thing is development of the application. Then testing team is responsible for testing that particular application. Then deployment means to deploy that particular application on the production level. You will just build some pipeline and it will deploy your application onto the production. Then you are only responsible for maintaining that particular application once it is deployed in the production. If some bug come out, if some issue you are getting onto the production system, then all those issues you are going to identify and work on that. So you have two teams, that is, one is the development team and the operations teams. So the operation team, basically here also you can think of like DevOps is mainly responsible for the development and maintenance of the application. But the better term is like DevOps is the link between these two, that is the development and the operation team, and they need to collaborate with both the teams. Now, we will understand each of the DevOps tools which are booming in the market or mostly used by most of the organization. We will get a quick overview on all those DevOps tools. The very first I can say over here, let me write. First, let me delete all these stuffs. Okay, now I have deleted. Now, first understand this term. You have one application, web application, for example. Web application means any application, like you can say you have the sites like Myntra, Amazon. So all those are web application. So you are developing a web application or your developer team is developing the web application. Here you as a DevOps engineer no need to worry about it. But the developer team is developing this application in any programming language of their choice like Python. And then once the code is built, everything developer team have tested in their local environment, they will push the code onto the Git. I will explain you what it is Git, but first let me write over here. So once the application code is developed by the development team, they will push the working code on the Git or any version control system so that each of the team members in your project can access the code if they need. Okay. Now, we as a DevOps engineer, no need to develop the application. Means this part we are not taking care. But we need to know how the developer works, which repo on the Git they are using, what all services are configured in the development. So you need to know about the source version control system like Git or Bitbucket, or actually these are being used to manage the source code changes and enable the collaboration between the developers and your DevOps team. These are essential for the application development as they help maintaining a history of code changes and allow multiple developers to work on the same code base simultaneously. So the very first important thing in your DevOps tools is the version control system. I will write it over here. Version control system. This comes first. Number one tool in your DevOps list. Now the next step. Once the app is developed and it is pushed onto the some version control system, we need some server where your application can be deployed and accessible to the users. The development team has developed the code and they have tested in their local environment, but the application need to be accessed by some users. So how it can be accessed? It need to be deployed on some servers basically. So the server can be either on the on-prem or it can be on the cloud like AWS, GCP or Azure. So now here comes our second tool, that is Linux. You can't say it as a tool, but this is the operating system. The second most important thing is the Linux. In Linux, there are multiple servers available, that it can be on the on-prem or it can be on the cloud. But now most of the servers are Linux-based servers. So you need to have the knowledge of Linux fundamentals like basic of Linux commands, understanding about the Linux file system, bit of networking like DNS configuration, IP configuration. Basically, you as a DevOps engineer need to know about the Linux command line tool mostly. Networking plays a key role in securing the software development and deployment process. For example, it enables the implementation of the firewalls and the security aspect and the VPN's configuration. Now, again, you don't need to deep dive into the Linux infrastructures. If in case system reboot is hanging or system at all is not responding, then there is a different team for that. Maybe you can say that is a responsibility of the IT team. But you as a DevOps engineer, you need to have a good hands-on on the command line tools, or mostly on the Linux side, because most of the applications are now being deployed onto the Linux servers. So the second technology you can say that comes in our DevOps list is the Linux. That is very important to know. And let's come to the next point, Docker. Docker. Why Docker is being used? Nowadays, Nowadays, most of the applications are being deployed onto the container level. We have different container technology available in the market like Docker or Containerd. So you need to know about how the virtualization works. Use a containerization tool like Docker to package your application and its dependencies into a lightweight or portable container. This allows you to easily deploy your application across different environments without any changes to the underlying code. So the third important tool in our DevOps list is the Docker, because it enables that you don't need to worry about the application code. If the application code is working onto your local environment, then it will definitely work onto the production servers as well. You don't need to worry about the dependencies and all these things in detail. So I will try to explain all these DevOps tools in much detail when I will make a dedicated video on the Docker interview questions or Linux interview questions. So when I will make a dedicated video on this, then I will try to explain you in much more depth. Okay. So for now, you can just understand that it is just a containerization tool. If some code is working onto your local environment, then same code, if you build the image, it will definitely work on the production server. It can be either on the on-prem or it can either be on the cloud. Okay. So now I hope you understood the third tool as well, that is the Docker. Let's come to the fourth tool. Let me make over here. Fourth tool. What is this basically? Here comes Jenkins. What it is? Now, at this stage, we have the developer who developed the code, and also you have the server. Now we need to deploy our application continuously so that the latest changes user can access. There comes the CI/CD pipeline for that purpose, which we call as the Jenkins. Now, first you need to package the application code developed by the developer team using some package manager tools like Maven or npm. Build the Docker image out of it and push that Docker image to the Docker Hub or private registry. Now, these all things will be done by a single pipeline. Okay. Now, you are going to write a single pipeline using the scripted or declarative pipeline that will deploy this application onto the containers. Or, okay. Now, using a CI tools like Jenkins or Travis CI to automatically build and test your code changes, this ensures that any issues are caught early in the development process and help you to maintain a consistent code quality. So I hope now you understand why Jenkins is there. Jenkins is basically once your application code is developed and it is pushed onto the Git, it will make sure that this particular pipeline, whatever you have written in the Jenkins, that will automatically be triggered and that code will be deployed onto your stage environment or onto the production environment. So you will maintain a separate pipeline for that particular use case. And whenever the change is there in the code, it will build the image, it will deploy that application onto the production level servers where you are deploying your application in the form of container. So this is the fourth tool that will come in my list. Now let me come to the next technology you can say, that is cloud providers. Now many companies are using virtual infrastructures. So you need to learn cloud services related to managing your application, mostly infra related services. So it is very easy to create the virtual machines from the UI, but the same thing can be done using the DevOps tools, which I'm going to discuss further. But you need to understand the various how the various cloud provider is provisioning the machines, how their network is configured. So all those configuration you need to understand. So the next in my list is the cloud providers. Now I will talk about the next tool, that is Kubernetes. What it is. Now you need to orchestrate your application so your application downtime is not there for users. There comes the concept of Kubernetes, which helps to manage the containers much effectively. Container orchestration tool like Kubernetes allow you to manage your application, scale your applications in the form of containers across the cluster of machines. This provides automatic load balancing, scaling, self-healing of your application. So the next DevOps tools in my list is the Kubernetes that you need to know. And in most of the project now we are deploying or orchestrating our application using the Kubernetes. So you need to know this particular tool as well. Let's talk about the next tool in my list. That is the monitoring tool. Let me write over here, monitoring tools. Okay, what it is. Now, once we have all the setup, we need some kind of monitoring tools to monitor our application. Like we have the configuration that once storage is more than 60%, fire the alert. So that last moment, there should not be any surprises or there should not be any problem for the users. There comes the monitoring tools like Prometheus for monitoring the application and Grafana to visualize the logs. So using the monitoring tools like Prometheus or Grafana to monitor the performance of your application and collect the metrics. This provides insights into how your application is performing and help you identify any issue that need to be addressed. So this is the seventh tool in my DevOps list. Let's talk about the next two tools. That is, let me write over here. I will write it together. That is Ansible. And the next is the Terraform. What are these? Now you have multiple servers like dev and production environment, and we need some kind of configuration on all the servers. There comes the infrastructures or configuration as a code tools like Terraform or the Ansible. You need to decide which tool you would like to prefer in your project. Like use a configuration management tool like Ansible or Chef to automate the deployment and configuration of your web application. This ensures that your application is deployed consistently across different environments such as the development, staging, and the production environment. Okay. Now, let me just go through one more scripting language. I will say it as a 9. Shell scripting or Python script, you can also say. Or these days, Golang is also there. Now, also you need to know one of the scripting language like OS specific, that is the shell script, so that you can write small automations for backup, mail notification or cron job scheduling. These type of job you can write. So you need to definitely know the shell scripting, but if you are technically good, then you can write, then you can also learn Python script or Golang, that is preferable. But for now, if you are the beginner, just focus on the shell scripting, that is more than enough. And even with 5 years of experience, this is fine to learn the shell scripting. That's it. Okay. So here comes all the DevOps tools that you need to know before starting your DevOps journey. What I have told, the very first is the web application development. Here, your development team is developing the code. Once the application code is developed, they have tested the application onto their local environment. They will push the code onto the version control system like Git. Okay. Now, once the code is developed, you want to test it on the servers so that your users can access it. So there comes the servers. Most of the servers are Linux based servers. So you need to have a good command on the Linux infrastructures. Okay. Now, once the application is developed, it will be deployed onto some Linux server, for example. But nowadays we are using Docker as a containerization tool. Why we are using it? So that if your application is developed or tested in your local environment, the same image or the same code can directly be deployed on some Linux servers where it is having a different configuration. For example, your local is Mac OS, but if you want to test your application code onto the Ubuntu server, so you need to create an image out of it so that the application can easily be deployed on some other environment or on some other servers. Now your application code is developed, you have deployed or you have created the image out of it, you want to deploy that application onto some server. There comes the Jenkins CI/CD pipeline. Here you will write the pipeline in form of a scripting language or in form of declarative language. You are going to write the CI/CD pipeline. Then you will configure all the configurations that you want. Whenever the code changes are there, I want to build the image out of it, I want to push that particular image which is with the latest code, I want to push it into some private or public registry, and once the image is pushed, it should be automatically deployed onto the Linux servers, for example Ubuntu based system, or on the cloud providers, or on the on-prem servers. Okay, now till this point we are clear. But nowadays, most of the servers are the virtual servers, and they are getting created onto some cloud providers like AWS, GCP, or Azure. So any one of the cloud provider knowledge is sufficient. So you need to know. First, you can decide like which cloud provider you need to learn, and then accordingly, most of the cloud providers are related to each other. Any one cloud provider language is just more than enough. Just focus on that part. Okay. So I hope till this point you are clear. Now we have the concept of the Kubernetes, which allow to orchestrate the application so that application will not have any downtime for the user. It will automatically create more replicas of your application and will give you a good latency rate for the users. Okay. Now the next in my list is the monitoring tools, because once the application is deployed onto the servers and your users are using it, you don't want your users to be in some trouble. So you are going to configure the alerts, you are going to see the usage of your applications using the monitoring tools like Prometheus. You will configure the alerts, and for visualization you are going to use the tools like Grafana. Okay, now in my next list we have the Ansible and Terraform. Ansible is mostly used for the configuration level changes. Terraform is basically used to create the infrastructures that I will discuss in much more detail when I'm going to make a dedicated video on the interview questions related to Ansible or Terraform. Okay, but as of now, you can think that this with the same configuration, you need to deploy the application on both the stage and production server. There should not be any mismatch. So for that particular use case, you are going to use the Ansible and Terraform. And at last, you need to know some scripting, like you can go with the shell or Python scripting so that you can automate day-to-day tasks. So basically, by leveraging these DevOps tools, organization can automate many aspects of the application deployment process. It will reduce the error and it enable the faster and more reliable software delivery. So these are very important questions, and you will definitely get these questions in your next interview, or basically the different versions of it. But the concept remains same, which I will be showing you today. So let's start with the set of questions. First question in my list is, what could be the possible reason if user is not able to SSH into the remote machine? For my use case, I have just created one EC2 instance over the AWS cloud, and when you go to your instances, I have just created it. Just select this particular instance, click on connect, and you will see that these are the information or these are the steps by which you can connect to this machine using the SSH protocol. So this is basically the key name, or this is the public key. Using this public key, you are allowed to SSH into this remote machine, right? So you need to make sure that when you downloaded this particular PEM key or the public key, you need to make sure that this particular permission is being set on this particular file. That is, we are setting the permission as 400, right? So this is a very important criteria. First, you need to see when your SSH is not working, right? Apart from that, you can see more configuration level changes also. All the configuration level things are placed inside a directory, that is the etc directory. So you are looking for the SSH thing, right? So you need to go inside the SSH directory, and inside that there is one configuration file called as the sht_config, where you are placing all the configurations related to the SSH protocol, right? So you just open this particular file, or Okay, and you will see that there are many parameters which you have mentioned in this particular file, and that is the system level changes. You have not done anything over here, but if you want to do something manually, you are allowed to do this change using the root user, right? So what you need to see that whether your SSH protocol is listening on the port 22 or not, whether you are allowing the IPv4 address to log in into this particular instance or not. Apart from that, what you need to see here, you can see few more information that whether your public key authentication is set to yes, because someone can manually modify it. So you need to verify all these things. Apart from that, this is the authorized key file. By default, all the public key information goes inside this particular directory, that is .ssh, and inside that you have a file called as authorized underscore keys, where you need to place all the key information. So you need to see whether your default path of the key is same or not. If it is not same, then you need to again cross check this part. Apart from that, what else you can check over here, that whether your password authentication is set to no or yes, and few more configurations are also there, like permit root login, whether root user are allowed to log in into this instance or not. Apart from that, if you want to set manually for some particular user, then in that case you have some configuration called as deny users. And here, if you give deny users Kritika, means Kritika user can't log in or can't do SSH into this particular machine. Apart from that, if you want to allow for some user, then you have the configuration allow users, and then let's say I have a user called as DevOps. So like that, you can give here the username for which you want to set the manually permission over this particular instance. If you want to just without saving, I will get out of this particular via editor, shift colon q semicolon, then just it, right? We are out of this particular vim editor of this particular configuration. Apart from that, also you have one more directory called as var empty directory. Inside that, you have one directory called as the SSD directory, right? You need to see what permission are being set on this particular directory. It always need to be like this. If it is something else, you need to verify that whether the permission on SSD directory is correct or not. What is this value basically? If you do the ls-latr, you will get these many output over here, right? So what is this? The first D stand for that this is a directory, okay? Then the first three flags, right, that is RWX, refer to the permission for the owner of this particular directory. So owner of this directory is having read, write and execute permission. For the group of this particular user, they are having they are not having the read and write permission, but they are having the execute permission. Same for the world also, it is not having the read and write permission, but execute permission is there. So these are few of the things which you need to explain in your interview, that these are the things which I am going to check if the SSH connectivity is not working on the remote server, right? Let's come to the next question. The next question is, what is the difference between systemctl start and systemctl enable? This is a very important question because it might get confused that what is the difference between these two basically. Okay, so let's say you are running a CentOS machine, right? And I will ask you how you are managing the services on that particular system. So you are going to use the systemctl commands using systemd to manage all the services on your Linux server or on your Linux box, right? So if you go to this particular instance, here I have one service called as Docker. I have installed Docker on this particular machine. And if I want to see, always if you install Docker on your machine, it will be running as a service, right? So to check the status of your service, you need to put the command systemctl status Docker. Okay, right? Currently it is inactive, means Docker is not running on this particular machine. But if you want to start this particular Docker service, then you have the command called as the systemctl start Docker, right? And same way you have one more command called as the systemctl enable Docker. So what is the difference between these two? So systemctl start is the one-time event, but systemctl enable is like systemd will start the service by default during the boot up time. Whenever you are booting the machine for the first time or every time you are booting the machine, this service will automatically be started if you have enabled this service. A start is just the one-time event. It will not start the service by default every time when you run the machine or start the machine again and again. It will not by default start this Docker service, right? Now, let's come to the next question in the same go, right? How will you debug the service if it is failing while starting? Let's say you are trying to start this particular service, that is Docker service. I want to start it, right? But somehow I am not able to start this Docker service. So where you are going to check the error, or where you are going to check the log service is not starting, like that, how you can check it? So if you see the status first, currently you can see that it is in the active state, it is running, so there is no problem with the Docker configuration. I am able to start it. But what if I am not able to start it? Then in that case, you have one command called as the journal CTL. And then after that, you need to pass some flag like -x EU and then the service name. Enter. So you will see all the log or all the detail. You just need to put enter. For the next line, you can put enter. Since nothing is there, I think like this, you can see all the service log. If something is failing over here, you can see all the log in this particular page. And this is the first entry point where you need to see if some service you are not able to start it. Apart from that, if you don't know what are these flags, then you have one page or you have one command called as the man. Inside the man page, you can see all the different flags. What are they? All the commands information you can see in the detail. For example, I want to see for the general CTL, what are the different flags available with this particular command. Again, you just need to hit enter. And here you can see different flag and what are they, all the things in detail. Here you can see -A, -F, like that you can read and you can analyze which particular flag you can use in your case if you don't remember it. But basically you need to remember the command that is called as the general CTL. Apart from that, every flag you can't remember it, but you can use the man page, right? This is done. Let's come to the next question. The next question is, let's say you get an alert on your production server that your particular file system is having high disk usage. So how you are going to debug that particular issue? So what your approach will be? The very first thing what you are going to run, or very first command what you will run, is the df-h command. What is the df command? df file DF command basically shows you the file system usage in your Linux server. -H is for the human readable format. You can see these are in the human readable format, 33 gigabyte. Like that, you can see all the information over here. These are the file system name. These are the file system which are available on your Linux box. These are mounted on these particular directories. What is the total size? How much is available? How much is the use percentage? All the information you can see using the df-h command, right? Apart from that, there is one more command called as the du-sh command. If you want to see all the file size, whatever the files are there in the var log directory, you want to see the size of all those files, then in that case, you can use the du-sh command to see that. Here you can see, right? In the var log, we have these many files and the size is this, like that. You can see all the information using the du-sh command, and this command also comes handy and you need to remember it to see which file is taking how much space. Like that, you can recognize why your disk space is almost full. All right. So I hope now you are clear with this particular information. Let's come to the next question now. What kind of issues can prevent you creating a file inside a specific directory? So there is no one answer for this one. It can be because of your disk space or your file system space is almost full and you're not able to create a new directory inside that particular directory, right? Or it can also be possible if you have create incorrect permission or ownership on that particular directory where you are trying to create a file. So those permission basically you can check using the ls-latr command. This I already explained you. Here you need to see the permission, whether what the permission is there for the owner, what is the permission for the group, what is the permission for the other world. This way you need to identify the permission, whether you have the permission to create a file inside this particular directory or not. For example, here I am logged in with the root user and root is the owner of this particular directory. So I am allowed to create any file inside this directory. But any other user who is trying to create a file inside this directory, it is not allowed because read and write permissions are not allowed for the group and other. All right. So this is the concept behind this particular question, right? Apart from that, there is one more important question, that is, what are the inodes basically? So inodes are nothing but it is like a file based data structure that holds metadata about all the files in the system, right? But if you run this df-h command, right? If you run this df-h command, it is not showing you the inode value over here. But if you run df-ih, I stand for the inode, you can see in these file system you have these much space that are being occupied by the inode. So inode is just a file based data structure that holds the information or the metadata about all the files in your system. So this is what you are seeing, that because of these many data structures information, this much space is occupied in your file system. This way you can identify, right? Apart from that, let's come back to the next question. What is the difference between soft link and the hard link? This is a very important question. There are two type of link basically in the Linux box, that is the soft link and the hard link. What are the difference between them? Let's understand this practically. First, let's get back to the home directory. If you do like cd, then the tilde sign, you will be inside the home directory. If you do pwd over here, you are inside the home directory for the root user. So what is the soft link? In Linux, a soft link is also called as a symbolic link. It is a special sort of file that points to a different file. It is just like a shortcut how you create in the Windows machine. So because the connection is the logical one and it is not the proper duplication of the files, the soft links can point at entire directories or the link to the file on the remote computers, right? So this is basically the soft link. How you can create a soft link, I will show you. Let's try to create a file called as touch.a.txt. What is touch basically? Touch create an empty file in your Linux box. So if you want to create a soft link for this particular a.txt, or better, we will just first create a directory over here, mkdir, y, just creating a random directory. Go inside this particular directory, do ls-latr over here. You will see nothing much is there in this particular file. Now we will try to create one more file over here, touch a.txt, inside this particular directory. If you do ls over here, you will see that a.txt it is showing. Now we want to create a soft link for this particular a.txt. How to create it? For that you have the command called as the ln-s. Then after that you need to write the a.txt. With what name you want to create the soft link for a.txt? I want to create it with asoft.txt. Hit enter. Do ls-latr again. Sorry. So you will see that a underscore soft.txt, it is showing that it is the soft link of this a.txt file. If you delete this a.txt file, then this soft link is not of any use because it is just pointing to this particular file. It is not having any content for this particular soft link, right? So it is not like the copy, but it is just pointing to some other file in your directory. Why you want to create the soft link? So sometimes it happens like you have some huge file which is placed in some other directory, right? But you want to access them in some another file system. Then in that case, instead of doing the copy of that particular huge file, you can point that to the existing file system wherever it is placed. There you can directly point it instead of just doing the copy to the another file system. That is a lengthy process, right? So that's why we create a soft link basically. And here you can see that I have entered the command called as the I flag also I am passing over here, right? So you can see that a.txt is having different inode number, and then the soft link is also having a different inode number. But here comes the difference between the hard link and the soft link. In hard link, it is basically the equivalent to the file stored in the hard drive. It is just like a mirror copy of the original file. Even if you delete the original file, it will not have any impact on the hard link file. Here what happened? If you delete this particular file, this particular link will not have any use. But in case of hard link, what happens? In case of hard link, even if you delete the original file, it will not have any issue. The hard link will still work. How to create a hard link? For that, you have command ln and -s you don't need to pass, then a.txt, and I want to create a hard link with the name b.txt, for example. Do again ls hyphen laitr, hit enter. You will see that b.txt it is showing over here, and this is having the same inode number with the like the a.txt, but in case of soft link the inode number was different. So I hope now you are clear with the concept of the hard link and the soft link, why we need to create it and what is the difference between them. Now let's come to the next question, that is, what are the zombie process? If you run the top command over here, top give you basically the real-time statistics of your Linux server. That is how your Linux server is performing, what all commands are running onto your system, again how many tasks are running onto your system, how many of them are in the running, sleeping, stopped, or in the zombie state, how much CPU is there, how much memory is there, how much memory in the swap is there. So how many users are logged in, how much is the load on your system, from what time this particular system is up. Like that, you can see multiple information over here using the top command. So there you can see one process state called as the zombie process. What are the zombie process basically? So it is called as the dead process in the Linux, and these process basically has finished their execution, but somehow the entry remains in the process table because it was not able to communicate properly with the parent process. It has sent the signal to the parent process that my job is done, but somehow the parent process has not killed it yet. So you can see all those process in the zombie state. Okay. So this is just the definition part of it, like what is the zombie process that you might get in the interview. They will ask you. So let's get back to the next question. How to change the default shell for all the users on your remote machine. So what is shell basically? If you run this particular command over here, you will see which shell you are currently using. So I am saying that I am using the bin bash shell. What if I want to change the default shell for all the users who are trying to log in inside this particular machine? So in that case, you have one path. So all the configuration, as I told, it is inside the etc directory, right? So inside that you have one subdirectory called as the default, and inside that you have one more subdirectory called as the user add. So not subdirectory, a file called as the user add. And here you will see that this is the shell which is coming by default. If you want to change it to something else, you can just go and change it over here. So this way you can change the default shell of your Linux box for all the users who are trying to log in inside this particular machine. Okay. Now let's come back to the next question, that is the, let's say you got an alert that a particular process is running from past 2 hours. What actions you will take in this particular case? So this is a very good question and it requires a good troubleshooting skill. So you need to tell your interviewer that this is the step which I will be following if I am getting these kind of alert. The very first thing what you are going to do, you see using the top command which all processes are currently running onto your system and which process is taking maximum CPU, or what is the from what time this process is currently running. You can see the time and these things. These are the command. Let's say I am taking the example of this Java command. Somehow I have installed Jenkins on this particular machine, so Java is actually running. So this is the process ID. Whenever you start some process, it get a unique process ID assigned to it. So just copy the process ID of the Java process. So that is 695, right? So this is the process ID. The next thing what you can do, you can run the command called as the ps aux command and then grep with the Java, because we want to analyze the Java process. So here you can see all the detail related to the Java process, which user has initiated, what is the process ID, what command it is running from by default, behind the scene which command this Java process is running, what is the port it is listening to. So all these information in detail you can see using the ps command. Again, for these flag information you can check the man page of the ps command, right? Now, if you want to see that with this particular process or with this particular Java process, how many files are opened in this particular Linux box, then again you have one command called as the lsof to see list of file opened by this particular process. So our case, we are checking for the Java. So Java process ID 695. So I will just hit enter and you will see that these many files are currently being opened by this particular Java, right? So this way you can analyze or you can identify that which process, why this process is running from long back, who has initiated this particular process, how many files are opened by this particular process, and you are getting the alert because of that, right? Let's say if you have set up the passwordless authentication between two Linux boxes, but you are still prompted for a password when you are attempting to do SSH. So there are few things or there are few troubleshooting steps which you can perform if the SSH connectivity is not working. So let's talk about those steps one by one. The very first thing what you can check is the permission on the .ssh directory. Okay. So this directory exists inside the home folder of the user. So just check the permission on the SSH directory and the files. So make sure that the .ssh directory and its content on both the client and server have the correct permissions. So the .ssh directory should have the permission. Which permission it should have? It should have the permission 700. Okay, means read, write, and execute for the owner or for the user, that is the root one, and the files within it should have the permissions of 600. Okay, right? Now if that permission is not correct, then in that case you can use the chmod command to set the correct permissions if required. Okay, now the next thing what you need to check is the key file names and the location. So you need to make sure that the public and private key files are located in the correct directories and have the correct names. So by default, the public key name should always be the id underscore rsa.pub and the private key name is id underscore rsa. Okay, and the public key should always be placed inside the .ssh. Inside that directory, you will have one more file called as the authorized underscore keys. And here you need to paste your public key, right? Whatever the public key you have, that is idrsa.pub, that public key you need to paste inside the authorized key on the server inside the .ssh directory. There is a file inside that you need to paste the public key. Apart from that, what you can check? Apart from that, next thing you need to check is the SSH agent. You need to make sure that the SSH agent is running on the client machine. You can check if the agent is running by running the command like SSH agent is the one command that you can run, and you can check that whether that SSH agent is running on your client machine or not. Apart from that, if nothing is working out, then you can check few log files also. So you check the system log files that exist inside the var log directory. Okay. Here you check the log files. So to ensure, just to make sure that everything is working fine or not. If you get some log over here, that would be pretty helpful for you. Apart from that, what you can check? You can check the SSH configuration. So where is our SSH configuration? That is again placed inside the etc SSH, and then you have the file called as the sst config. So here you need to make sure on the server to ensure that password authentication is disabled or not. Look for the line password authentication inside that file, and it is recommended to set it to yes, otherwise change is to no, and after that you need to restart your SSH service, right? So few things which you need to check, like if your SSH connectivity is not working, just make sure that correct permission is placed on the .ssh directory and its content with whatever the contents are there inside that particular directory. You need to make sure the correct permissions are there or not. Apart from that, you need to check whether your correct public key is placed inside the authorized key file or not. Apart from that, you can check the system log files that is placed under the var log directory. And then you need to check that SSD config file, whether the password authentication is disabled or not. So few things, whatever I have discussed, that you can answer in your interview, that these are the troubleshooting steps which I'm going to perform if the SSH connectivity is not working between two Linux boxes. Okay, I hope now you are clear with the very first question. Let's discuss about the next question. That is, let's say user root has created a file called as secret with some permission. But what you want that file should be allowed to be opened by only the root user and another user called as test. So how this can be achieved? What all steps you are going to do to achieve this particular target? So let's discuss about this part. So the very first thing what you are going to do, you need to create a file, right? You need to have a file called as a secret. So how you are going to create a file? So you have the command sudo touch and then the file name. For us, the file name is the secret. So it is going to create a empty file with the name secret, and that is owned by the root because we have created with the sudo, right? Apart from that, the next step what you are going to do, the next step is you are going to change the permission for this particular file. So how you are going to change the permission for this particular file? Chmod, after that 640, and then the file name. So what does this 640 denotes? So it is denoting that the first 6 is denoting that we are giving the read and write permissions to the owner of this particular file. So the owner is the root. The next is the read permission for the group, and after that no permissions for others, means everyone else I am giving no permissions. So okay, after this we are going to set the owner of this file to the root and the group to the test. So how to change that ownership? So for that we have the command chown. After that we are making the owner as the root, that is the root one is the owner of this particular file. And beside that, we are changing the ownership to the group test for the file secret. So this is how you are going to change the permissions of this particular secret file. With these permissions and ownership settings, only the root user and the test user, means inside that test group you will have the test user. So they will only be having the access to access this particular secret file. Let's say this test group or user doesn't exist, then in that case you can always use the user add command to create a new user called as test. So I hope you got the high level overview on how you can change the permission of any file or how you can change the ownership of any particular file, right? Now let's come back to the third question in the list, that is, write a command that will look for files with an extension .sh and has the occurrence of the string scale in it. Anything is fine, right? Any string you want to search in all the files which are having the extension .sh. So how you are going to write that particular command? So the command is find, you want to find the files, right? Finding the file in the current directory, right? I'm currently finding all the files which are having .sh extension in the current working directory. So then I am going to find the file based on the name. So here you are passing the argument name because I want to search only those files with the name which are having the extension .sh. So let's give the extension .sh over here. After that, you need to give the pipe symbol. What this pipe symbol will do, whatever the output of this particular command you have, the output of this one will be the input to whatever you are going to write over here. So the very first thing what I will write, that is take all the arguments over here. Okay, so whatever the output you got from here, right? So it will be treated as an input to this part, and this is taking those part as a standard input, right? Apart from that, what you need to write next is grep. You want to grep means search or do the filter, right? So on what word you want to filter? So the word is basically scale, right? So this is my string. So using this command, what I am going to do, I am finding all the files in the current working directory or inside whatever the directory I have. Inside that, I am finding only those files that are having .sh in their extension, and then I'm gripping only those lines in my file which are having the word or string scale in it, right? So this is the purpose, or this is the command which you can use to just look for the files with an extension .sh and has the occurrence of the string scale in it, right? Let's come back to the next question. So, how to make a process persistent after the shell dies? So, this is just a scenario based question. You might being asked like how you can run the process in the background. So, how to do it? So, to make a process persistent after the shell dies, you can use a tool called as a NoHub. Let me write it. The name is NoHub, right? So NoHub is the tool that you can use to make the process persistent even after the shell dies. Now, these methods allows you to detach a process from the current shell session and keep it running even after you close the terminal or log out. So how to do it? So you just need to write NoHub and then whatever command you are going to run, right? Let's say I'm just running the ls command, and after that you need to write ampersand. Yeah. Okay. After that, you need to write ampersand. So this is making sure that the program or the command, whatever you have written over here, that is running in the background. And even if your shell, you close your shell, that this process will not die and this process will keep running in the background. Right? So the no hub command ensures that the process continues running even if the shell session is terminated. The ampersand at the end runs the command in the background basically. The no-hub command redirects the standard output and standard error of the process to a file named as nohub.out in the current directory, right? And you can also specify a different output file using the -o option. If you don't want the default file name, then in that case, you can just change the file name also. But apart from that, the default file is the nohub.out in the current directory. It will just output whatever the logs are there, it will place in that particular file, right? Apart from that, let's come back to the next question in my list, that is how to add a user without user add command. So whenever you are trying to create a user, right, you already know that we can directly use the user add tool, and with that we can create a user very easily. But what if you don't have the access to run that particular command? How you are going to add the user? So basically with this particular question, the interviewer is trying to ask like how you are logically, whether you are clear or not behind the scene what is happening if you are running the user add command, so whether you know the process or not, right? So what steps I'm going to follow in this case is, let me write it. The very first thing what I can do is add an entry of the user details in the etc password file, etc then PASSWD, right? So whenever you are going to create a user, you will see that one entry will be created inside this particular file. So when you are not using the user add command, then you need to manually create that entry or write that entry in this particular file for the new user, right? Apart from that, also you need to make the entry in the group, right? etc group. So whenever you create the user, a group entry will also be created inside the etc group, right? So these things are happening by the command user add directly. But if that command you are not running, then in that case you can understand that behind the scene these things are happening. Apart from that, what you can do, that you can change the password for the user password, and then whatever the user you have created, that username you can pass. So it will ask you to change the password for that particular user. So that particular thing you can also do. Then once the user has been created, after that what you need to do, you can switch to that particular user, and then you can verify whether the password which you have set is working or not, whether your user is created or not. So all these things you can check, and this is how you are going to manually create a user, right? Let's talk about the very first question, that is in Kubernetes, when you are going to perform the rolling update on a deployment, how you can control the availability and surge your pods using the maximum unavailable and maximum surge parameters. So basically, what are these parameters and how they are going to affect the rolling update process? This is a simple deployment file where we are going to deploy a Java-based Maven application on the Kubernetes cluster. So here we have defined two parameters in the rolling update process, that is the maximum unavailable and maximum search. So what are these parameters and how they are going to affect your rolling update process? So the first parameter is maximum unavailable. So this parameter specifies the maximum number of pods that can be unavailable during the rolling update process. Like in your case, in this particular deployment file, we are having the replica set as 4. So with maximum unavailable 2 means Kubernetes allows you to two pods to be unavailable in the non-running state or not ready state during the particular update process. So this ensures that at least two pods remain available to handle the traffic when the update is in the progress. Now let's talk about the maximum search parameter. So this parameter specifies the maximum number of extra pods that can be created during the rolling update process beyond the desired number of replica. So if your desired replica is 4, it can create up to 2 more pods to handle the traffic. So in total, you will have 6 pods that can be created at a particular time. Okay. So with maximum search as 2, Kubernetes can create up to 2 additional pods during the update process, resulting in a total of 6 pods, means 4 desired that is set as a replica and 2 extra temporarily running during the update, right? So this is basically these two parameters will help you during the rolling update strategy. Okay. So now why you need to use these parameters? So maximum unavailable ensures that a certain number of pods remain available to handle the traffic during the update, preventing the downtime for your end users. Now maximum search allows Kubernetes to speed up the update process by creating extra pods, ensuring that new pods are ready before old ones are terminated and they can handle the traffic for the end user. So let's talk about the next question, that is, what is the difference between entry point and CMD in the Docker file? So both are used to specify the command that will run when a container starts. But there is a slight difference between using the entry point and the CMD. So what are those differences that we are going to talk now? The very first is, what is the entry point and how you are going to use it? The container is designed to run a specific application or the script. Like in every time the container start, it will make sure that those particular instructions inside the entry point will always be executed and you don't want to override it. Like if you are running a simple jar file or a simple Java application you want to run, and every time this app.jar will be running inside the container and you don't want to override it, in that particular scenario you will go with the entry point in the Docker file. You want to ensure the main command is always executed regardless of the user input. User is not going to override the instruction which are going to be passed inside the entry point. It will always make sure that this particular instruction is always executed. Okay. Now, what is the CMD and how is it different from the entry point instruction? So CMD is used to provide default arguments or commands that will run when the container starts, but it can be overridden by the arguments passed during the Docker run. For example, here I am passing a CMD instruction inside the which the argument is bash. But this can be overridden when you are going to run the docker run command. So here I'm trying to override this particular bash argument with the ls, and this can only be done when you are using the CMD instruction. This can't be done when you are using the entry point. Okay. Let's see this example. Here also I have created one Docker file. In this Docker file, I am building a simple Spring based application, and every time this particular application will run inside the container, I am always going to call this app.jar file and it will be running inside the container. I don't want to override it. But in case I want to override it, then I need to go with the CMD instruction. Okay, like this, I am overriding this particular instruction. Here I am passing the bash argument inside the CMD instruction. But when you want to override it during the Docker run command, you can override with any command which you want to run during the runtime. Now let's talk about the third question, that is, what is the default node port range in the Kubernetes cluster and what is the node port service? Okay, so the node port service in the Kubernetes is a type of service that exposes an application running in a cluster to the external world by opening a specific port on each node in the cluster. And the default node port range is 30,000 to 32,767. Okay, so the node port is a type of Kubernetes service that allows external traffic to access a service running inside the cluster. Now, when you are going to create a service of type node port, Kubernetes allocates a port from this particular range, what I discussed now, on each node in the cluster. Now, how you are going to access a node port service? Once a node port service is created, you can access it using the following format, which I have mentioned it over here. HTTP colon double slash. Then you have to give the node IP that you can get it from the command kubectl get nodes. Okay, hyphen o void. From that command, you will get the node IP. And after that colon, you need to specify the port on which this particular port service is exposed. It will always be in the range this one. Okay, fine. Now let's talk about the question 4 in this particular video. You need to write a bash script to clean up the Docker images from your local Docker repository. It can be your local Docker repository also. It can be your private registries also. But in case you are using a private registry, then you need to make sure that you are passing the authentication while running this particular script. So let's talk about this script line by line. The very first thing is here you are passing the variable called as image underscore name. So this variable is particularly currently set to Java-app. This is the name of Docker image you want to search for and delete it. You can replace the Java-app with the name of any other image you want to clean up. Okay. Then the next line is you are going to search for all the images matching with this particular variable, right? So in this particular command, Docker images hyphen hyphen format, this command will list all the Docker image on your system in the format, this one repository colon tag. In this particular format, whatever the images are going to be exist, it will list all of them. And the format, the hyphen hyphen format flag ensures that only the repository and tags are displayed, making it easier to search and filter the results. Okay, and you are going to just filter with the image underscore name, means you are going to filter with only the images which are going to start with the Java-app, because you want to delete only these images, right? After that, if no images are found, then in that case, this images variable is null. So it will just print you that no image is found with this particular name, right? And in case the images are found, then it will list all the images which are present in this particular list. It will show you that one. Okay. Now you are going to delete all the images with different tags in this particular list. So to delete all the images which are present in this particular variable, you need to loop through each image in this particular image list. So here I am looping or iterating through all the images in this particular variable, and then I am running the docker rmi command forcefully to delete that particular images. So if you are working with a Docker, you might be already knowing what are these commands. Docker images will list all the image in your particular registry, but here we are grepping only with the image which exists with the Java-app name. Then Docker RMI command, it is used to delete that particular image. If you want to delete it forcefully, if it is being used in any container and you want to remove it forcefully, then hyphen f parameter you need to pass it over here. So this particular script is very helpful if you want to delete all the dangling image which are not in use. If you want to delete it, then this shell script is very useful. Now let's talk about the last question in this particular video, that is question number 5. So how would you give a user test permission to execute a script owned by another user without changing the ownership, right? So you have one script called as script.sh, and you want to give the execute permission to another user without changing the permission for this particular script.sh file. Okay, so how to do that? The very first thing is you need to use the set facl command. It is used to set access control list on any files or directory. ACLs allow you to define more granular permissions for a specific users or groups beyond the standard Linux permission. So here what I am doing using this particular command, I am setting the flag as -m. This means you want to modify the ACL. Now for the user John, what I want to give, execute permission to this particular John user. Okay, user is John and I want to give the execute permission to this particular file, right? So Now the chmod command, what it will do, the chmod command is used to change the permission of a file or directory. U plus X means for the user, means for the owner of this particular file, you want to give the execute permission to this script.sh file. In this, the very first question which we are going to discuss today is, like, imagine you have a pod with two containers that need to share the temporary data. So how you are going to configure this using an empty dir volume type, okay? Or what happens to the data in an empty dir volume if a pod is being deleted or restarted, okay? So the very first question which comes to our mind is, what is empty dir volume type? So in Kubernetes, empty dir is a type of volume that is being created when a pod is assigned to a node. It is an empty directory that is initially created or can be used by the containers in the same pod to store the temporary data. So it is basically a type of volume that is useful for sharing the data between the containers in the same pod or for the temporary storage during the pod's lifecycle. So let's get through one example. This is a simple example where I am trying to use the concept of empty dir volume. So the very first thing is this volume definition. What here I am defining? The empty dir volume is defined under the volume section with the name temp-storage. And then we are creating two volume mounts in between the main container and the side container. What is this volume mount? Both the containers, the app container and the site container, both are mounting the empty dir volume at the path slash data. And what is this path being used for? This is being used for the data sharing between the app container and the sidecar container. So basically your app container is writing some content into this particular mount path, and then your sidecar container is reading this particular file from the same path using the concept of the empty dir, because both the containers are sharing the same volume mount or the same path. Okay. Now, what are the use cases where you are going to use the empty dir volume type? So it can be used for the temporary storage for the data processing, or it can be used for sharing the files between the containers in the same pod, what I'm showing over here, right? Now, you need to be cautious about the size of data stored in the empty dir volume. Why? Because it is using the underlying node local storage or memory. So if you are trying to overload this particular empty dir path, then there might be the case where your node will start crashing. Okay, so your application will stop responding. So you need to be cautious about that. And if the pod is being deleted or evicted, means if this particular pod will evict or will restart, the content inside this particular mount path or inside the empty dir volume will be lost. Okay. So this is the answer to my this particular question, right? What happens to the data in an empty dir volume if a pod is deleted or restarted? So the volume will entirely be lost because it is a temporary data which will only be available till the time pod is up and running. Once it is started or evicted, this particular volume will be lost. Okay. Let's talk about the next question, that is, how would you troubleshoot and resolve a crash loop backoff error in Kubernetes? So what steps you are going to follow if you are encountering the error like crash loop backoff in Kubernetes? Okay. So the very first thing is a crash loop backoff error in Kubernetes. It indicates that a container in a pod is repeatedly crashing and restarting, and it is a common issue and can occur for various reasons, such as you have the misconfigurations or you have the application error or you are having some resource constraint. So basically there are multiple reasons which can result into the crash loop backoff status for a pod in Kubernetes. So the very first thing is you need to identify the problem. The crash loop backoff status means the container has crashed and Kubernetes is trying to restart it, but it keeps failing. Okay. So the what steps you can follow? The very first thing is you can check the pod status using the command kubectl describe pod and then the pod name. Here you can check for the error messages or warnings in the event section. Okay. Now you can look for the reasons like, are you getting the error? Are you getting the OM killed because of the memory constraint? Or what error you are getting in that particular kubectl describe command, right? The next thing is you can check the container log. How you are going to check the container log? For that, you have the command kubectl log, then the pod name. And then specify the container name. Basically, in a pod, you can have multiple container. One might be the main container, one can be the init container, or one can be the side container. So basically, you have to specify the container name over here and see for the log where exactly it is failing. And if you are saying like if it is an application specific error, in these particular commands, then check for the missing environment variables, or you can check for the application settings, or you can check for the dependency issue like database connection failures or something else. Those kind of high level steps you can perform if you are getting a crash loop back of error in Kubernetes. Okay, let's talk about the third question, that is, can you describe a situation where you use Terraform to automate a complex infrastructure setup? So here you can answer something like, in one of your previous projects, I was tasked with automating the deployment of a highly available multi-tier web application on AWS using Terraform. And that infrastructure involves a VPC, a subnet public and private both, an auto-scaling group for the application servers, an RDS database in a private subnet, and elastic load balancer and security groups to enforce the strict access control. So basically, the goal of my task was to make the infrastructure modular, reusable, and easy to deploy across multiple environments, that is, dev, staging, and production. So basically, you can try give a hands-on on this particular project also. This is a very good project which involves a lot of AWS services which you can practice and try to automate it using a Terraform. Do it in from your side also, and basically this you can answer in your interview for this particular question also, right? Let's talk about the fourth question, that is, a critical application on your Linux servers has stopped working and you suspect the disk is full. So how you are going to troubleshoot and resolve this particular issue? The very first thing in Linux you need to identify is the disk usage for the Linux server, and that can be done using the command df-h. Now you need to look for the partitions with the 100% usage, and you need to identify the large files or directories in that particular path, right? And this can be done using the sort command. Basically, the output of this particular command you are piping as an input to this drive, right? And using the sort, it will be sorted in a particular order, and you will identify the largest files or directory in that particular path. Now also you can check the log files inside the directory var log, and here you can delete the old logs which are present over here. Even you can delete the /tmp folder, whatever the contents are there inside the /tmp folder, that can be deleted because these are the temporary data, and it can be more by the time you are seeing this particular error. So you need to basically delete these content in this particular directory or path, and this can help you to identify the performance of your Linux server. And if necessary you want to persist these logs, then in that case you have to extend the disk or add more storage to your server, right? Let's talk about the next question, that is, you run a Terraform plan and see a large number of changes that you were not expecting. So how you are going to troubleshoot this situation? The very first thing is you need to verify the Terraform configurations files. See if there is any recent changes in the .tf files which is leading to the particular changes in the Terraform plan. Also, you can using the version control like git, using the commands like git diff, you need to identify the changes which you have made recently in the code that is leading the situations which you are not expecting in the Terraform plan output. Also, you need to ensure that the state file, that is the terraform.tf state, is up to date and consistent with the actual infrastructure, right? So these are basically some of the questions that I felt is important, and it can definitely help you to crack your next DevOps interview. So do let me know if you want some more questions on any other topics in the DevOps. I will definitely try to make videos on same, right? Till then, do subscribe to the channel DevOps Tech Stack for more contents on these type of topics related to DevOps. Thank you.